Just very inspired by the lens that Ron gets to experience life through. I just truly appreciate it. I guess, where do we want to start? Let's see. Can you tell us a little bit about your, I'll call it your day job?
Transportation planning.
A lot of my focus, especially in the last 10 to 20 years, has been on the rail transit side. And there's very much community-based focus, on that. But yeah, currently I'm a vice president and also the national environmental planning leader for a national planning, engineering, architecture firm. And the projects that I've managed over my career have been very focused. I'm managing not only the environmental under the National Environmental Policy Act and all the other regulatory acts like clean water, clean air, historic preservation. It's engineering and environmental that I've managed in major transportation throughout most of the major cities in America.
Art and music in Denver.
We actually developed an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary team that actually included musicians and artists. And so we had at each transit stop, we created a different type of plaza or placemaking at those transit stops. And it included sound installations, artwork.
Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. When you see the little microphone in the lower right, click on that to learn more. We're so glad you're here. Washington, D.C. and St. Louis, Missouri.
And I've done that in several other cities, including Washington, D.C. and St. Louis, Missouri. We used art in transit money down in St. Louis. I remember we got a big grant to include artwork as part of the the infrastructure or the placemaking of the transit.
Placemaking and transit.
You've won me over with that. I mean, seriously, that is incredibly cool. I mean, there was a big movement in the architecture and built environment a while ago, 1% for art, which is really underplaying, what you need. But that's great. Did you butt up against any resistance when you included music and art in your teamwork?
They wanted to do it. We came up with the idea, of course, but then our client was very, very open.
The federal infrastructure bill.
I got 100 million questions going through my head. So one of them is with the huge federal infrastructure bill. Was anything written into there about supporting communities and supporting and using art and music and community-based endeavors to support the infrastructure work?
Oh yeah, well, clearly community-based.
Yeah.
Okay, and a real focus on community and neighborhoods. And what I've seen is a trend towards those elements of diversity, equity, and inclusion within the context of any type of not only community engagement, but also as part of the project, community enhancements, that kind of thing, and including, it could be even helping fund community centers, or it could go on and on and on.
The National Environmental Protection Act.
The implementing regulations for the National Environmental Policy Act are being updated now with the new administration in. And I've been on a team that's coordinating with the White House Council on Environmental Quality, and the current chair, she is very, very much pro diversity, equity, and inclusion. And those elements are going to actually be written into the implementing regulations. So all the transit agencies, the DOTs, all the federal agencies, including Park Service, et cetera, that'll be a part of the project. So
Hope.
That's a real sea change, right? That
mhm.
and I am given an element of hope with that statement. That's kind
I'm
of cool.
I'm very hopeful too. In fact, I was just on a call about an hour ago and we were talking about that. It's a national NEPA working group that the National Association of Environmental Professionals has. And I'm sure you're both aware then that I'm a past president of NAP and I'm still chairing their leadership development initiative and other types of mentoring things that we're doing. So
Connecting.
How did you guys connect? Lauren, how did you bring this wonderful
LinkedIn.
participant?
We connected on LinkedIn because Laura and Nick through Environmental Professionals Radio, which is their podcast. Ron's was one of their top viewed podcasts, I believe. He was kind of called out in a post. I think I might have also been called out in the post, or I saw it for sure. And I said, I want to interview him.
That's awesome.
And that's how it happened.
Yeah.
The Northwest Cultural Council.
I would say writing poetry is an avocation, but I've been very involved here in the Chicago area with a group of not only poets, but visual artists called the Northwest Cultural Council. And so we've been doing some real interesting things. We're a little bit, everything's virtual now when we meet each month, but when we did some real interesting gallery shows where the visual artists actually painted a painting, and then the poets were asked to go in and see them before the actually gallery show opened, but they were mounted on the walls of the gallery. And if we were inspired, we'd write a poem about it, and then they framed the poem right next to it. It was really cool.
The poet Mary Oliver.
We also did a real tribute to Mary Oliver when she passed away. Mary Oliver is my favorite poet, and it was a real nice tribute to her work, because our visual artists actually took one of her poems that they were inspired by and actually painted a visual painting of it, and then we mounted the paintings, and then the poets would actually read Oliver's poem. It was just really cool collaboration there, and I really love that.
Ron is a true Renaissance man.
So you are involved, like you are deeply involved. And now I really want to know how do you get in? First of all of your projects sound fascinating. So how do you get involved in so many fascinating projects? Like
I've just been really fortunate. I can't even explain
it. You found these really interesting.
It's
between NAP, cool. The Northwestern Cultural Council, then you have the work that you're doing. It's very inspiring. I'd love
and then
I'm shadow you for I don't know, a month.
And then
I suspect that he gets involved with projects and makes them exceptional.
That's probably very true.
And I see my educational background, and if you don't know, I got a civil engineering degree from U of I Urbana, which is still one of the top 2 or 3 engineering schools in America. And in fact, they actually call it the Civil and Environmental Engineering program now, and I did have an environmental focus to that. But then I got a master's from the Springfield campus of U of I in English, and my master's thesis was a volume of poetry. And I was actually commuting from the family farm in central Illinois to the campus just to do it. So I was actually working. I actually put myself through college by working on the family farm. And then when I was getting my master's, I was actually in partnership with my dad there for a while.
Midwest hard work ethic.
And I'm still the executor of the farm estate. We should finally get everything. My dad actually passed at the end of February in 2020, but we celebrated his 95th birthday
Oh my gosh.
on February 13th. If you can imagine that, he was one of our great World War II veterans. He was very involved with the community and the rural community and the church, and he became very involved with soil and water conservation. And he actually became the president of the Illinois State Soil and Water Conservation Districts.
Wow.
And so I think that was a real influence for me to actually really go the path I went, related to, environmental planning and environmental protection and that sort of thing. So, and because I farmed with him, shoulder to shoulder, he named me the executor. I've got an older brother who would never do his farm chores. And then a younger sister, so, but I actually believe that's part of why I've been successful. It's that Midwest hard work ethic,
Right.
that just naturally comes to you.
Soil and water.
You talked about soil and water conservation and farming. I mean, totally linked to understanding soil and water value, right? So do you think that having that real connection, that life connection to those resources informed your environmental studies and your civil engineering studies?
Yes, definitely. Because I felt a real connection to the land, and I still do.
Yeah.
And even when I was young, at the end of the day, sometimes I would just, if it was after the fall harvest or something, and the sun was going, maybe it was a beautiful sunset or something, or it was after sunset and the stars were out in the night, I literally would still walk out into the field.
Yeah.
It's just, and when I'm there at my dad's farmhouse, again, it's got such a beautiful view, great sunrises, great sunsets, beautiful uncluttered sky, no lights,
Nice.
In fact, even at times, and it's usually in the wintertime, and you look real far to the north, and if it's especially dark night, maybe with just a few stars or so, but still clear, you can see flashes of the northern lights, if you can imagine that.
The Sower, a poem by Ron Deverman.
Did I share any poems with you?
You
Laura?
did. You shared
Oh.
one poem with me. I have it.
Was it the recent one that I kind of reworked called The Sower?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yes.
And then I sent you the photograph too, so make
The
sure you
Van
share
Gogh,
that with
right?
Jody. Yeah,
Oh, that's great.
if you, I'd love to read it to you if you.
Oh,
don't
please,
mind.
will you?
I have a very distinct memory with my dad. We had a wheat field that we had heavy rains in the spring, or maybe it was late spring, and some of the wheat, the young green, it's green, and then it grows up, and it drowned it out. So he and I literally took sacks with wheat grain in it, and then just you just hand it out by hand, and that's where this poem comes from, because I was inspired by Van Gogh's painting, but yet it linked to a very personal farm memory for me when I was a young boy. So I'll read it to you. The Sower, from a painting by Van Gogh. Blackbirds soar as you walk the open field, feet tramping the blue, loamy soil, right hand releasing ripe seeds waking. It is enough to be alive on this clear morning, the sun a radiant flower unfolding, goldenrod flooding the horizon. No moon, sliver moon silence. This field, your garden. You could be anyone, hold any job under the provincial sun, but rebirth begins here. First, the green shoots, then stems and pulpy centers, then grains forming full in the shaft. Patience. There is time to know everything we've learned, to believe that a seed grows into something larger, a life greater than the one, to believe in love and immerse ourselves in the blue flames of its promise, to feel as close to heaven as we are to this earth. Shall we touch each other as deeply? It is enough to find your footsteps in the blue earth, connecting your work to this deep, fertile land, spreading its spirit through us, deepening our roots, our bodies feeling lighter and more at peace with the day's end. The grain sack empty, the mind and heart full.
Okay, shivers
You
in
know,
that last sentence. It's so beautiful. I love the feeling you said it so clearly that the connectivity to each other comes through the connectivity to the earth, right? That's something that really touched me, because I think that that's something I'm discovering in design, is that we need to reconnect people to the planet, to the earth, to the roots, to the green, to the growing, to the cycles.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it was lovely.
and to
Ron.
take it a step further, Jody, how it's, you know, to be very present and to be very aware of, you know, the life too, and the fact that you are just part of the whole.
Yeah. And I wouldn't, I think that we sometimes think when we're part of a whole, we're in some way diminished, but I think that's actually quite the opposite. You've illustrated through your words the value in that, the power in that.
Thank you. Yeah, it really hits home, you know, for me. And just as we were talking there in the last couple minutes, it kind of reminded me too of the connectedness to the seasons, you know, and spring, and of course on the farm we're getting ready for spring planting, and then we're probably planting the crops, and then working with the crops to make sure they grow well, and then of course in the fall the harvest, and then in the winter everything is fallow. So and then everything, you know, the spring everything reawakens again, you know.
It's amazing.
Mind, body, and spirit.
I love that your career and your life has touched the spiritual through poetry, and the art through poetry, and the highly technical civil engineering and assessing environment, right? and that you also the heart of it being the family farm, right? So you've got mind, body, spirit all in there.
For sure, yeah.
Community in Detroit.
A project I managed in Detroit, for example, we took a different focus related to the public involvement. We weren't going to have public meetings where we were like talking heads in front of a PowerPoint screen talking, and then blah blah blah, and then we take a few questions and we go home. We created we had 3 or 4 community meetings, and we called them community conversations.
Nice.
We set it up with round tables, and then there was each person was facilitating maybe 8 or 10 people's comments to gather those comments about what what was of interest to them, what did they value in their community, and what would they like to see.
Interstates to Boulevards.
That actually was one of the Interstates to Boulevards projects, where they're going to deconstruct I-375, which was an interstate spur that came out of the Eisenhower era in the late 50s and early 60s off of I-75 in downtown Detroit, and went right down Hastings Avenue, which was a very, very wonderful area, minority, but also just immigrants from so many different parts of the world were living along Hastings Avenue. And there was the Black Bottom neighborhood was residential, and some eating places, but then right next to it was Paradise Valley. And that was where the clubs were and the theater venues where the Motown sound was created. And Diana Ross actually was born just north of Paradise Valley. And it's got such a history. And so in that project, we were honoring the history as well. But basically, they're deconstructing. It's in final design now. So they're going to be deconstructing this concrete canyon that separates the neighborhoods from downtown, bringing it back up to a boulevard street with bike paths and sidewalks and stuff on each side. And I managed that project. That was an environmental assessment. And then I've spoken nationally as well as internationally at the International Conference for Transport and Health just a couple of summers ago on that project.
I mean, that's seriously what's happening. I cut you off again, Lauren. I'm sorry. In
No,
Syracuse
you're good.
and in
Go
Albany.
ahead. Yeah, it's happening in both of our
It's happening.
cities.
Yeah. So
Hopefully it's happening.
hopefully, and it's all originating from community discussions in order to get the ball rolling and create that momentum.
Yeah, you can actually you can Google interstates to boulevards, and a whole bunch of projects start popping up all across the country.
I'm sure Albany will be on that list at some point soon, which is really exciting.
Weaving it all together.
Do you think that it ties back to your time growing up on the farm? You seem to have, I really like how through and through, whether it be a hobby, a passion project, or your professional project, how you're always seemingly interweaving community, art, and in some cases, almost like getting back to soil. Like if you think about this fact that, an elevated interstate and bringing it back down to boulevard level, how do you think I'm so impressed by your ability to consistently weave these three things in. And do you think, was it like an arts background or something that you continue to foster despite going into engineering? I'm so curious.
Yeah, I think it is part that the fact that, I have the engineering background, but I have the art background in the context of writing, creative writing and poetry, especially. I mean, poetry is so visual. And in fact, I've written a lot of poems inspired by paintings, and I didn't even know there was actual term for it until about 2 years ago. And one of the poets on one of our sessions here with the Northwest Cultural Council called it ekphrastic writing. And it's ekphrastic. And don't ask me to spell it, but
Ekphrastic poetry.
It's actually writing that is influenced by some kind of visual object or some visual thing. And I thought, oh, well, that's what I've been doing.
I think that's great.
And so one of my first goals, and I've gathered them some. On the weekends I can work on it a little bit, and the books I want to publish is probably those poems that I were inspired by, whether it's paintings or sculpture, or that kind of thing. So,
crafting with words.
I think it's great because what you're doing is you're crafting you're working with words, you're crafting words. And I think that too many of us don't understand how to communicate well. And the structure, even if it's a loose structure, the structure of poetry forces you to be deliberate in your word choice and how those words are creating the visual for the reader.
Yeah.
And that probably, I'm taking a huge step off the beaten path here, but I bet that you are more able to communicate with communities because of your respect for words.
Empathic listening.
Yeah. And I think I've learned how to listen empathically over time too. And and that's good. And I sort of came to a realization within the last year or two, and I just happened to come upon, if you remember, I don't know if you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Mhm.
And it's kind of a pyramid kind of thing, but once you get close to the mountaintop there, it's self-actualization. And that's what we all should be striving for as human beings, self-actualization. And so in a way, using the technical and the art together is helping me, I think, sort of fulfill that journey to try to be a real human being at the end of your life.
Wow, which is what a
You're
powerful
serving
thought.
so many human beings because of it in the process, right? I mean, I
Oh
really
yeah.
this emphasis and even the work that you're doing, with the White House to really focus on people who have been treated unequally for so long, and being able to move that needle is incredible.
What would Robert Moses think?
Yeah.
Imagine what Robert Moses would think if Ron said, "Yo, Robert, it's great that you want to build a highway, but we should have community meetings first, and we should make sure that all of the related intersection points celebrate art and music." I think Robert Moses would not be amused, and more power to you for that.
Yeah.
All voices.
Well, it's nice to see it changing though now, seeing mindsets change towards more community, community inclusion of all, listening to all voices, making sure all voices are heard for sure. How do you need to, make that happen and make sure you get the greatest ideas and the greatest innovations, from your team as you go along. So,
wow, it's all kinds of things, right? It's trust.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah.
You said it's empathic listening, which is not a skill that anyone teaches in school.
Yeah, and it's certainly collaboration, because I always look at collaboration as part communication, part problem solving, but then also part relationship building. And building those relationships that create trust, really important. So,
Public service.
Public service work is quite different from private sector. But I'm making that adjustment myself right now, and it's
oh yeah. Well, I'm glad I had that experience first, because I really learned what it is to be a public servant.
Yeah.
Especially with a state agency, and I was going to all the different district offices and that sort of thing, and just being with the public and seeing how you're serving the public by what you do. That was a nice learning moment for me.
Excellent.
A whole person.
Yeah.
I'm just very inspired by the lens that Ron gets to experience life through. I just truly appreciate it. I don't know why I'm being so struck by this tonight. I'm not, but I just really am. I just really appreciate it.
Well, I think
Thanks, Lauren.
it's rare that you find someone who can bring an appreciation for art and communication to what is perceived as a very technical, almost linear career, you know?
Mhm,
And I
mhm.
think that I appreciate that as well. A lot of people tend to not set aside, but tend to not talk about their creative inclinations in their day job. And I think you have found insights in both directions
Right.
from being a whole person.
Yeah.
Which I think is
Oh,
great.
thank you.
Novel concept.
Time for one short, funny cow story.
Do you want to hear the one short funny cow story?
Yes, the
Yes.
one short funny cow story, and then we need to move to heroes and something else. So
Okay.
I like this.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this brief, but I'm pretty sure it was when I had already graduated from U of I. I had come back, and my dad and I were in partnership, and I think I might have started to attend classes for my master's. But again, farming is 24/7 sometimes, especially during the harvest, and so it's very exhausting. And so I was attending classes and everything, and we had finished the harvest and on a Friday. And then I thought that night, and at the time I was just living by myself in the North farmhouse, actually where I grew up. And I thought, well, maybe I can sleep in late, that sort of thing. And but I was awakened by the sunrise coming through my east bedroom window. And so I looked, and then I did a double take, and there's this huge cow head looking in my window, this huge cow, that obviously has gotten out of the pasture. And so then I go, I had to do a double, triple take. I can't even believe this cow's looking in my bedroom. And so I went outside, and there was a cow. And then down the road, very close to my house, was the whole herd of cattle. Somehow they had all gotten out. It was like 35, 40 head of cattle. And it was just nuts. And so I had to call my cousin, who lived in the farmhouse a half mile away, but was sort of on the other side of the cow herd. And he helped me get him back into the pasture, and we had to mend the fence. And here I thought I was going to sleep in that Saturday morning, but there you go.
So sun and cow noses disrupted your sleep.
Exactly.
Wow. At least they didn't come in and make you coffee.
There you go.
That would have been really
Nice
disconcerting.
gesture.
Yeah.
So funny.
Heroes.
Oh, wow. Well, just off the top of my head, I'd have to say Mary Oliver, the poet Mary Oliver, who did pass away. I think it was January of 2019. And one of the things I did as I was segueing out of being president of the National Association of Environmental Professionals to immediate past president, I put together for the NEP leadership some different quotes. And some of those were from Mary Oliver, from her poem, Summer Day. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Think about that one. And then another one of her poems. In fact, I called that words that challenge, words that evoke beauty, words that give us hope, and words that inspire. And so words that give us hope. How could there be a day in your whole life that doesn't have its splash of happiness?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And then
So
this is the last quote. It's a short one, words that inspire. And it's from my favorite poem of hers, The Place I Want to Get Back to. And so they came, the deer, on their slender legs, and gazed upon me, not unlike the way I go out to the dunes and look and look and look into the faces of the flowers. And then one of them, the deer, one of them leaned forward and nuzzled my hand. And what can my life bring to me that could exceed that brief moment? Isn't that wonderful? The intimacy of the connection there is just phenomenal. And I get that poem out every once in a while. I got a whole shelf of her books over here, and just, oh man.
The intimacy of the connection, and also the raw, very raw ability to appreciate the moment, which I think most of our culture has lost that ability to be in the moment.
Yeah.
Thank
No,
you.
I've learned a lot from her.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna, you know what? In all honesty, the name Mary Oliver sounded familiar. I've heard that name before, but I don't believe I've read any of her poems, and that is gonna change.
I absolutely agree. I will admit, I've never been a poetry fan, but you have just sold me on exploring this a bit further. Honestly.
And
her specifically, but
you'll also need to tell us as you move into publishing your work, because the poem you shared with us was also striking and thought-provoking.
Ron's focus.
So the other question that we like to ask, and I just cannot wait to hear what your answer is going to be.
Oh gosh.
We don't know. We like to ask people, if you could push the pause button on people worrying about anything but one cause, what would the one cause that you want everyone to kind of wake up and be more aware of be?
Yeah, I would say just the one cause going forward is just that we continue to understand and love each other more as human beings and really respect that. And I think that was in that poem. It was in the poem, The Sower, right?
The connection.
The connection, and can we feel as close to heaven as we are to this earth? Shall we touch each other as deeply? I mean, wow, if we could continue to do that.
That's beautiful and healing and positive. Yeah. I think that the world needs more of those three things.
And our wrap up. Thank you, Ron.
I have to tell you, sometimes when we meet with someone that we don't know, there's like this little thing in our brain, in my brain anyway, saying, oh my God, how is this going to go? Is this going to be I have gotten so much out of talking to you.
Well, thanks, Jody.
Thank you for your time and your
it's been my pleasure.
With us. Oh, glad.
Oh, I've enjoyed it so much. Thanks, Lauren.
For
setting this up.
Thank you so much. We'd love to have you back to talk about anything, but especially, any published works you come out with.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I will. That's a goal of mine, is to start sending things out.
We hope you've enjoyed Subject to Change. Come back again.
Let's keep the dialogue going.
That's great, Ron. Thank you.
Yeah, we look forward to having you back, and thank you so much for your time this evening.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Jody.
My pleasure. Have a great rest of the week.
Okay, I will.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.